Movie starts and we see Professor Joseph Hitler, who is sitting in his Mercedes and he's looking at a picture. In that picture, three dogs stand in such a way that one is behind the other and the third is standing behind them. On seeing this, a truck comes to stop and the truck driver is going toward the forest for toilet. Professor Joseph shoots his gun and targets him. We see two girls, one of them is Jenny and the other is Lindsay. They both belong to the US but have come to Germany for outing. They had gone to the club to celebrate the party and Lindsay was taking on the call about the party location. Although both used to travel but they had no specific idea about Germany. Both take rented car and travel at night to location of the party. The party's location was not known to them. Passing to the jungle, comes out quite far and has lost their way and gets stuck in the problem. When Jenny takes a U-turn of the vehicle and their car's tire gets punctured. They try to call car repairing service but it is a forest so there is no signal on their mobile. And they get stuck on a main road and should take help from anybody who passes from this road. Then a car passes there and they both try to take help from him. An old man in this car sees that both look alone and seeing them, he tried to harass Bhalvali. They are scared too much and lock the car from inside. Then that car goes from there. Then they find a home where they can call for help. It is late at night and they both walk toward the forest. Then they see a light coming from a house. They both walk towards this house. Then suddenly rain starts heavily. They both get very wet when they reach this house. They knock the door and Professor Joseph comes out. They tells him their problem and tells to call emergency for a car repairman. Both are alone and the professor invites them in. There was a strange painting in the professor's house that she was looking at with her strange eyes, and that whole painting is quite disturbing. The professor then asks them, are they tourists? And one of them says that we are from New York and have come here to visit Germany. She again tells the professor to call the emergency, call repairman, but the professor doesn't pay attention and ignores them. He then asks, are you relatives? There she replies, we are not relatives, but we are friends. Then the professor gets up and goes to the kitchen to get some water. Also makes a fake call that Jenny and Lindsay think he might be calling the call repairman. Then he mixes a drug in the water which Lindsay drinks but Jenny drops the glass. Seeing this, the professor treats them very badly. Then he goes basement to clean the water. Going basement, he feels an injection. On the other hand, Lindsay was in a faint condition because of drug effects. But Jenny doesn't and she tells the professor to call again, but he refuses. Then he injects the same injection into the neck of Jenny and she had been fainted immediately. Then the professor is having breakfast and Jenny and Lindsay find themselves in the professor's lab. They see that they are tied to the bed. In addition to these two, there is also a man. He is also tied up and his dad, the truck driver. Professor comes in the lab and tells to the man that you don't match and it's time for you to die. Then he injects a poison injection into his veins and he dies as soon as he sees it. He then buries the driver's body in his garden. Then we see the professor bring a man unconscious with the help of his anesthetic drugs. He is from Japan and is placed on bed with Jenny and Lindsay. They all came to senses and started screaming because they did not know what the professor would do to them. He comes forward to clear their confusion and introduces himself as the Professor Joseph and he is a retired surgeon. He was a mad doctor. One of its weirdest profession was to stitching living things. Not long ago, he did surgery with three dogs behind each other. And that mad doctor was going to perform the same operation on Jenny, Lindsay and Japanese because their skin tissues matches. He was also telling them about the operation details. He first pulled out their knee ligaments and finished them completely so that cannot stand. He was also telling them about the operation details. He first pulled out their knee ligaments and finish them completely so that cannot stand. He will connect subject B to the backside of the subject A and also the subject C to the backside of the subject B. He will take off the skin their hip and put the skin of their jaw there and connect the three as seen in the diagram. So when the subject A eats a food, its waste material will go into the mouth of subject B and it also will go into mouth of subject C. It is obvious that this process is quite cheaper and disgusting and no normal person can do it because this doctor is crazy and he likes to dirty experiment. It is his first experience on human body. First of all, he injects a lethargic injection to the Japanese man that calls him in unconscious state. Jenny is screaming loudly and Professor tried to give the same injection to her as well. Meanwhile, Lindsay finds the rope with her teeth and run away. She has deep needles in her hand and which are pulling her skin and causes bleeding. She goes to a room and closes its door, but Professor arrives there and breaks in window of that room. Lindsay also runs away from there and falls into a pool. The professor also comes there and covers all pool with lead. Then suddenly electricity gets off. Taking darkness benefit, Lindsay runs away. She goes to Professor's lab and opens the robe of her friend Jenny, who is unconscious due to the injection. She drags Jenny from there and brings her outside, but Professor also comes there. He also hit the same injection to her and now Lindsay becomes unconscious as well. Then he picks both of them and brings in the lab. Then he starts the operation. First, he brings out the subject's ligaments and teeth. Then he marks their body from marker and then removes their hip and face skins and does a long time operation. Then a few days later, the professor is shown while drinking, and in front of him, his human centipede is placed on the ground. Their wounds are not yet healed, and Professor tried to force them to stand up together. They are connected in this way that at the forefront is the Japanese man, middle is Lindsay, and at the most end is Jenny. Jenny is at the end, and she is considered as the tail of the centipede. They are feeling pain, but Professor makes a photograph by standing them forcefully. Then he shows them a mirror, and they started constantly crying, but watching their condition. He keeps them in the cage and behaves like animal. Professor again breaks Japanese man's jaw. Then we see that the professor is treating them very badly. Take them outside. Then the Japanese needs to go to the toilet. On the rejection, his human waste goes into the mouth of the Lindsay. Lindsay has to swallow it. Was a dirty process in viewing, even in the thinking as well. Professor checks their medical condition, which shows that Japanese is fine, but Lindsay has constipation because she is not digesting the human waste of this man. On the other hand, Jenny is not receiving any food or power source for her body because she did not eat anything and getting weaker. Her wounds are still fresh and she seems to be dying soon. Professor thinks to relocate Jenny. Meanwhile, sudden knock on the door appears and we see two police officers. They came for the missing girls.